वाहेगुरु 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 वाहेगुरु.
That's all right then. So I wasn't taking part. I felt like I wasn't taking part in the seva, but to hear that actually the Guru Sahibs entrusted one of the Manji Sahibs to, a Bibi was really, it was empowering, and it was empowering to actually take a different take on it. So because a lot of the contributions that were made by the Bibiyan seem very domestic, so they were very much to do with langar, very much to do with raising the children, but they actually did a lot more. A lot of the Sikhi was instilled by the mothers. If you read the Sakhi about the Gurus, it was their mother that got up with them in the morning, that did her Nitnem early in the morning, that was always reciting Simran and doing Mool Mantra Jap, or while she was doing all of the seva that she does in that house. So in a recent discussion that we had in our group, we also discussed looking at how you can make the littlest things that you do, that you feel like as a woman, I'm having to tidy the house, I'm having to do this, I'm having to do that, but you can turn it into bandagi. So, this seva in everything that you're doing, it's the fact that you're also looking at the fact that, okay, my child's left a room in a mess, I've got to cook dinner for them all today, but to try and change that sort into that sort that the Matavan did, that held that sort of image of what a Kaur is that looking at, hang on, actually, it's a seva. Everything I'm doing, it's not, oh no, look, the sink's full, I've got to wash those bandits. Seeing that, oh, I've been given that opportunity to do this little bit of seva here, and if I look at it positively, I can do the bandagi with it. And I can, I can tick so many things in one go by just changing my thought on it, because a lot of the time, especially myself, I grew up feeling quite resentful towards the fact that the boys in our culture got pushed more, weren't expected to do some of the household things. Whereas as a girl, I thought I have to fight harder. I have to work harder to get myself a career, to get out of this mindset of what a Bibi does. But when you actually look at, when Sikhi becomes important to you, when you look at the significance of what Kaur is and how much you offer a child's upbringing, and then, as a result, how that child grows up and how your nurturing had an effect on them and so many generations beyond your children, you realize that it's so much more important than just that focus of what the Western world are pushing you towards trying to become. And I think it's just that mindset. And if you go back to the mindset of what Kaur is and what your responsibilities are, it's really empowering as well, if you look at it in that perspective, in that sort of image.
Yeah, for me, Kaur is about kinship as well, because even though I had never met you, the fact that, we both use Kaur, I feel a kinship. I feel as though you could be a cousin that I've not met already. And so, you could be living in Canada or the US or anywhere in the world, but if somebody's got Kaur in their name, I feel as though I know them. I feel as though it could be a second cousin that I just met.
Yeah, completely understand what you mean. Yeah.
And I suppose, like, from a leadership point of view, that's what I feel, that when we feel connected with a very large community, I mean, I know Sikhs, we're not the largest community in the world, and yet it feels really large.
Yeah.
It feels really large, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
We're all over the world, and we, not only are we all over the world, we seem to find ways of remaining connected to each other in some sort of way, even though we might not physically be, interacting overtly, and yet we are interacting through the gurdwaras.
Yes, yeah, and that shows. I mean, obviously we've had the three Singhs that have been potentially, threat of being sent back to India, the extradition. And then we've had things like the little Singh that was being bullied last year, and the video went round. And I used that as an example for my son. I did say to him that although it was quite upsetting watching that little boy go through that, the fact was that the Sikh community stood up strong. They felt, like you said, that sense of belonging to one another. Whereas equally, when that's happened to, you know, sort of a Caucasian child who's been bullied, I don't see that sort of kinship. I don't see people stand that strongly in that sense of belonging, that that was one of our own and what they've been through. The only people that will stand up then are people whose own children have been bullied, whereas with our community, that's slightly different. And that does come back to what you said about that sense of belonging, that it's, you know.
And I suppose for any, you know, for any kind of leadership, there has to be that sense of belonging. We need to feel that, you know, this is our own.
Yeah.
We can't lead something which is not our own.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I did look a little bit about other symbolism, if we're all right to discuss. Is that?
No, let me go through the next one that I want.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I didn't realize it was.
Yeah, so the next one that I want to share is Gurmukhi. Can you see the second one?
Yeah.
Here? Okay, so Gurmukhi. So this was created by our gurus. Gurmukhi was created. There were other languages that existed at the time, but Guru Nanak Dev Ji and Guru Angad Dev Ji, they obviously felt that it was important to have a script that was specifically created for the Gurbani to be transcribed and left as a legacy. Why do you think a new script was created for Gursix, rather than using the languages that already existed?
Yeah, I think they like you said, they needed their own language, they needed their own education system. There's some research that's been done into this, that when the British actually invaded England, they found that the education system in Punjab was one of the best, and the way Gurmukhi was taught to children and the methods it was taught in was one of the best, and they actually wanted to try and destroy it because it was so good. And then equally, now when you look at how we were taught at school, we weren't taught how my children are taught how to read English now, but they're very much taught via phonics and sound. And Gurmukhi is a simple language. What you read is exactly how you say it. There isn't any complexity to it that somebody else can't access it. And the same way we have Langar, and Langar is accessible to all, and we all sit on that even level and we sit and eat together, and there is no somebody higher, somebody lower. Gurmukhi is very similar. There isn't that complexity to it. It is accessible to all. And, you know, Guru Gobind Singh Ji left that legacy. He used Damdami Daksal to make sure that it was always kept as pure as it ever was when it was given to us, and it wasn't ever going to be changed. And it gives us that sense of belonging. And Guru is the Shabd, you know. Our Guru we get from Bani, like Guru is Bani, Guruji we get through Bani. So the same way Christians believe that the truth is the word, and because we get the truth from Guru Granth Sahib Ji, it needs that respect. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji must have known from day one that this is all going to be left, and in the empowerment of like Vaheguru's word and what Vaheguru is about, and how we live our lives, and how we spiritually, how we survive in this world. All of that knowledge is all going to be there in Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So it's actually the start of the main focus of our religion from day one. And it was absolutely important that they brought that language about right from the beginning.
And as you say, it's a phonetic language, and it is very easy to learn. I went to school in Punjab for 2 years before we came to England. And that 2 years of schooling has enabled me to be able to read everything that I want to read in Punjabi. Okay, I'm not, you know, I've
Yeah.
got 2 years of education, so I can't say that I am a scholar in Punjabi. Of course I'm not. I can't
Yeah.
novels in Punjabi, but I can read the Bani. I've got enough knowledge. And whereas learning English, you know, we have 20% of our school leavers in England leave with no formal qualifications, 20% of them. And it's like they've been at school for 10 years minimum.
Yeah.
And in 10 years minimum, they haven't learned to read and write properly. Whereas this, in 2 years, I've got enough knowledge to get by. You know, I can read signs, I can read newspapers and whatever I can. So obviously it's a language, as you said, it's a language which is easy to learn. There's no kind of like elitism, you know, you don't.
Yeah,
So
completely.
it was kind of democratizing, wasn't it? You know, like making literacy accessible for all.
Yes.
And so that was like maybe one thing. And for me, from a leadership point of view, it was innovative. This is innovation. It's like having empathy for those who are not able to read and write, and then creating something which will be. My father never went to school, and he learned to read and write himself.
Yeah.
And one of my brothers hardly ever went to school. You know, he had the opportunity, but for different reasons, and he learned Punjabi by himself. And so this is about an innovation which is making literacy accessible for everyone. So that's part of leadership as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I came into Sikhi quite late. I was 29, and I couldn't read Punjabi. I could speak it fluently because of my mother being from India. And then that's when I came into Sikhi, and I thought, well, I really want to be able to access Gurbani. I want to be able to read my Nitnem in Gurmukhi, not in the English translation. And I, you know, started taking Santya, and you wouldn't believe, you know, within a year or two, I could read. And to think that it was accessible, and it was accessible in all of the Gurdwara Sahibs. I was going to 3 Santya classes a week because I had the passion at the time. Maharaj had given me that drive, and he made it all accessible for me.
Yeah. So let's go on to the Khanda then. So here we've got the Khanda. Tell me what the Khanda signifies. What does the Khanda symbolize for you?
So we have the chakra in the middle, and that symbolizes Vaheguru. You know, in Mool Mantar, we say that God was here before the beginning, God was here in the past, God is here now, and God will always be here. That also symbolizes truth and the everlasting sort of existence of Maharaj and Vaheguru in us. And then you have the Khanda in the middle, so the actual Khanda that runs through the middle of the Gursikh Khanda is that double-edged sword. And when you look at the double-edged sword, you can also sort of cross over into sort of medium Bidi, and Guru Gobind Singh Ji said that this was really important, that, you know, equally carrying 2 Kirpana, because we have the symbolism of like the Amiri side of it, that commander, that leader, of, you know, the sort of like following the typical leadership styles of being that Sahib. But then equally, you can't have Miri by itself. You can't be a leader without the Bidi side, which is the internal spiritual side of you. And in Sikhi, the strongest thing about the spiritual side of you is that you look after everybody else before you look after yourself. So, you know, you need to be a good leader, but you can't be a good leader if you can't look after your people at the same time. And it's carrying that forward in your work as well. And thinking back on my time as a teacher, and even jobs that I've done before I became a teacher, I will never turn away somebody that needs help, whether I have time or not. I will make sure I make that time, and I never ever pass somebody else on to someone else or say I don't have time for them, because it's just that compassion that you have inside of you, that if I am in that position where I have that gyan on a certain topic or a certain part of my work, then I should share it. It's my duty to share that. And it's looking at that. So like I think in Sikhi, if we are leaders, we always make sure that we put ourselves after we put everybody else first. And I think that's what makes us good leaders as well.
Yeah, and it's about, you know, the double-edged sword, and the fact that there is the sword which represents Miri and the sword that represents Biri. It's that we don't divorce politics from our faith.
Yeah, but it's not the only importance. You know, it's hand in hand with making sure that we've got that spiritual side as well, and we don't forget that. We don't forget who we are. We don't forget what we've been taught. We don't forget that, going back to it, we're a part of a whole brotherhood or sisterhood. Or
yes, it's again to do with having both love and it's about truth and love together, isn't it?
Yes.
If we only have truth without love, that can be very cruel. And if we have love without truth, that can be a bit, I don't know, it's dysfunctional in its own, it can be dysfunctional in its own way, that it's a pretense, it's a masquerade then, you know, if it's, so yeah, we need to balance these things. It's like, so Miri and Biri, when they're hand in hand, there's a balance between truth and love. There's a balance between wisdom and prosperity, for example. You know, it's like, it's having, for me, that circle and the double-edged sword in the middle, it represents balance in some way. But
yes, completely.
Okay, so the next one is the Gada then. So what does the Gada represent for you?
Gada represents quite a lot. I mean, there's a lot of symbolism around the Gada, and the main one that's always stood out to me, and this is the same one I tell the children as well, is that every time you see your Gada needs to remind you of your duties as a Sikh, of your beliefs as a Sikh, and you know, before we even think about doing a bad action or doing anything that could jeopardize anybody else's, you know, way forward in their work, if you're thinking about it from a job perspective, that you think first, hang on, have I got compassion? Have I thought about how what I do next at work possibly will impact on my other colleagues? Have I been truthful about what I'm doing? Am I making the gains? Am I following my goals in that truthful sort of, you know, way that I should be, how the gurus have taught me? So it's that reminder of constantly, they're almost like your handcuffs to Maharaj and your handcuffs to, but not in a restrictive way, but in an empowering way. I think in a way you're being held back from getting lost in Maya and getting lost in that very sort of selfish progression that some people fall under, that I just want to make my way up and the company, I want to get to the top and I'll do whatever it takes to get there. Whereas Akara should help us realize and remember that actually it's not about being selfish, it's about being selfless. The best leaders are going to be the leaders that think about their people, because if you do put yourself first, are those people that are working beneath you or working for you going to respect you? Are they going to respect your decisions? Are they going to be helpful or willing to do anything that you need them to do for you? And it's always about that teamwork first, thinking about everybody else first. But like I said, the actions that you do in your workplace, if you go back to the leadership style, are they true to what you're doing in Sikhi? And it's that reminder in your, and you see your hands more than you see anything else, any other part of your body when you're working, especially these days when you're working from home or you're working on computers. So, you know, it's that constant reminder that's in front of you, visually in front of your eyes all of the time.
Yeah, for me the gada represents solidarity in a way, and so it's like solidarity, as you said, it's kind of like a reminder of who I am, it's the identity. So it's solidarity with that aspect of my identity that I want to be reminded of.
Yes.
There are so many parts of our identity that we forget. Sometimes you may forget that you're a mother. You may forget until you see your children, then you remember.
Yeah.
So
I understand. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, it's solidarity, and it represents part of our identity that we want other people to be visible to other people. Because I remember, because I've traveled a lot, and I've traveled in in Europe and all over the place, and I know that wherever I am, whether I'm in Spain, whether I'm in Italy, people will see me wearing the gada and other sects, and they will know who I am, and I want them to know who I am.
Yeah.
I don't want to be just kind of like sort of people not to recognize me for who I am when I'm not in the Punjab,
Yeah. And when you go to the sort of American continents, you can very easily get mistaken for being Mexican or Brazilian or anything because of our skin tone, and we don't normally have that in England. It's quite clear that we're of Asian origin, but when you go there, it's very easy to be mistaken.
That's right. Yeah. That's why so when we're kind of like out of our own context, it becomes even more important to even in London, I used to rely on my gada for people to know who I am, because I could have been anybody, it's in a cosmopolitan city, people don't know who you are because there are so many people that look like us. And so again, it's to do with, look, this is who I am. I want you to know, if you want me to if we share some values, here's a conversation. It's like, we know that there's already a starting point.
And it's the first symbol, isn't it, that you look for? Like with my children, it's the first thing that they identify somebody with, that they are Sikh, is them wearing a gada. Completely.
Yeah, and do they want to be known to be Sikhs? Because that for me is the distinguishing thing. It's like, people, when I wear my gada, it's because I want everyone to know I'm a Sikh.
Yes. Yeah.
So
and it shows that you've got those fundamental values of any Sikh. It doesn't matter whether you're baptized or not baptized, because ultimately that is in our DNA, it's in our blood. It's generations of those core values that we have, that that are in us, that are instilled in us. And the first step for any child in a Sikh family is them wearing the gada.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one is the dastar, the pag, the turban. So what for you symbolizes that, or what does that symbolize?
Royalty, individuality, that you're that you're willing to stand out in a crowd, and it shows so much strength. Because when I first came into Sikhi at the age of 29, so I'd grown up cutting my hair, colouring it, doing everything that I needed to do, and I started to come into Sikhi. I wore a patka first, and when I did wear a patka, I mean, obviously this isn't for everybody, but for myself, I felt quite timid, I felt quite shy with it on. But as soon as I started wearing my dastar, I actually felt so much taller, so much more alive, so much stronger, and I wasn't afraid of how I looked anymore. I felt proud that I looked like that. And equally with my son, when he had a few issues surrounding his patka at school, I went into school to do a presentation on this, and I said that you will always be able to identify a Sikh with their dastar, and if they're in complete Sikhi roop, where they've got their unshorn hair, case, and they've got their dastar, that it was always that belief that they're almost like it's their uniform. They're almost like the police, that if you see somebody in that group, you can trust them, that they will have those values, that if you're ever in trouble, they will come to your aid, they will come and help you if you call for them. So it's that strength, that they're willing to look different. It's that sense of royalty and leadership, because our gurus wore them to show that, you know, we're no less than a king. Because in those days the kings wore they wore some sort of head covering, they wore, you know, the star in their own way, but only they were allowed to wear them at the time. But this was empowering us to say, well, no one's lesser or higher than anybody else. We're all equal. We all have access to that same amount of sort of spiritual sort of rule, or also, you know, like within our workplaces, our community, some people are in very high powered jobs, and I'm very proud of like what they've achieved and what they stand for. And I think slowly in Britain as well, people are understanding what Sikhi is really about and the values that we hold. So yeah, it's a uniform. Again, it's almost like the Qur'an, but it's that statement that you're making to people that if you are in trouble, I'm here. Mm-hmm. I'm a protector.
Yeah, and I have heard people refer to it like as a crown, you know. Yeah. And so again, this was a way of democratizing power, so that rather than like that person on the pedestal, only one person having the authority to wear the bag or the star, you know, the turban, everyone can wear it.
Yes, yeah.
Which means everyone can be a leader. You see, so this is all about like once you choose to take on that leadership role, so it's, you don't have to be chosen. We make the choice ourselves.
Yes, yeah.
So it's self-appointed leadership, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But then again, you've got a job description that goes with that, and you need to value that job description, and you need to make sure you're adhering by it, and everybody that you need to make sure that you're looking after, you are looking after at the same time, that people can see you as somebody they can come to if they need guidance or if they need help with anything.
Yeah. And the visibility, sometimes it takes courage. Like you said, in your own case, it took courage to be visible, to be visibly different.
Yes.
Require courage. And so it does represent courage as well. People have given their lives for the right to be able to wear a bag.
Yes, they have. They have. And I mean, I work in an all Islamic school now, and the girls absolutely respect where I come from, and the fact that I don't look at them for the historical sort of, you know, history, the historical sort of past that Muslims and Sikhs have got. I look at them as children that are growing up in faith, and children that will hopefully one day be mentally stronger because of that, and who face the same sort of difficulties that we often face because of how we look. But then what I try to do is empowering to them that don't ever feel ashamed of you wearing your hijab, but actually feel empowered. Remember everything that, you know, your faith instills in you that people without faith might not have. And it's the fact that you've got this path that's actually it's a gift. And remember that anytime you're ever in trouble, you will always be able to go back to that foundation that's being built for you now.
Yeah, it takes more courage to be unfashionable compared with being fashionable.
Yes, completely. Do you want to be the sheep or, you know, the lion?
Yes. Okay, so the next one is about the langar and seva. You know, these are symbolic customs, rituals that we have. What does seva and langar represent for you?
Well, there's the obvious that no one's above anybody else, and we all sit on the floor and we eat. We're all equal. But then there's that. It's the selfless service. It's going back to, again, like we said, with the leadership style, it's putting everybody first. Let's make sure everybody else is fed before we're fed. You know, making sure that your children understand that as well. So like my son complains sometimes that we've got a roti, but then I remind him that, you know, yes, we're eating roti tonight, but Guruji's given us this. Langar is such an important part of our faith that, you know, it's that gratefulness that we have for having, you know, that food in front of us on that day. And I said, and no one will ever go hungry, because what our religion teaches us, that we feed everybody else first. We make sure everybody else is looked after. Somebody comes to your house, you won't let them leave without having food or, you know, a drink before they've left. And leadership styles are very much like this. You will be the best leader that you can be. You will be the most respected leader if you do that. If you put your employees first, you make sure that they are, you know, that, you know, is it Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Mm-hmm.
The most important thing on that, the most basic need of a human is being fed first. And Guruji used to say, Bangat before Sangat, that come to me with your stomach full so that your basic needs have been met, and then we'll do Gatha and Sikya discussion, and then you're there, then you're present then, because you haven't got that basic need, you know, your stomach churning and you're hungry and that sort of thing. So it's the selfless service, putting others first, and that basic need being met first.
And also it's to do with humility as well, isn't it? You know, because I find that it can be very rude if people, you know, if you're like, let's say our family is serving, you know, we've hosted the langar and people go away without eating langar. That can seem very rude, can't it? Because there's no humility. Like, they want to go home and eat their own food. It's like they don't want to sit on the floor because their clothes might get dirty sitting on the floor. That's, it does require humility to sit on the floor, regardless of like how expensive your clothes are, and to eat what is served for everyone else, rather than kind of like, you know, maybe you have more luxurious food at home, but being willing to eat what is, you know, like you may consider to be not as nurturing as what you have, you know. So there is that humility.
There is a little bit of humility, but I don't think anyone has ever been disappointed with it once they've had the experience. So even if you bring somebody from outside your culture into a Gurdwara and they get the experience of langar, you'll never, sorry, you'll never get them going away feeling disappointed with the experience that they've had, even though initially, like you said, they may feel a little bit uncomfortable about sitting down on the floor, but they'll always go away feeling that you know, re-energized, that we sat in a community, we all sat together, we all ate together, everybody was served the same food. So I've never had anyone give me a, you know, outside of Sikh who's had an experience where they haven't. And my children absolutely love langar. They've never felt, or you know, that they've lacked anything, because I think Gurdwara Sahibs now do cater for children and everything.
Yeah, but there is this kind of thing about, rather than individualism, it's partaking of what everyone is going to be eating, rather than our personal choice.
Yes, yeah.
So let's go on to the next one then, the Nishan Sahib. So what for you does the Nishan Sahib symbolize?
The Nishan Sahib symbolizes that that we stand out in a crowd, but the Nishan Sahib originally came about when Gursikhs were being hunted down by the Mughals, and it was a way of making sure that people were able to find a Gurdwara Sahib, a Guru Sahib, and you know that their places of worship were still around, and being able to find where they were. So to me, it's like, I personally, I get a feeling of comfort when I see a Nishan Sahib, because I know there's a Gurdwara Sahib there, there's my Sangat there, Guruji is there. If I'm hungry, I'll be able to get food from there, nourishment from there. It encompasses everything, that feeling that a child gets when they think about home. You know, that's my place of comfort. Seeing that Nishan Sahib for me on a personal level is knowing that I'll be fine there, I'll be sheltered, I'll be fed, I'll be spiritually nourished as well as the nourishment I'm going to get from the food. That's my personal take on it, even though on a practical side, it's so you know where the Gurdwara Sahib is, but the symbolism of that is that feeling of safety, that feeling of, you're being held.
Yeah, it's a sanctuary, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
This is a sanctuary, a safe space. Okay, so finally, let me ask you what your interpretation is of the Guru Gobind Singh Ji's horse and falcon.
Yes, so the falcon, I'll speak to you a little bit about. The falcon, when you actually do the research on it, so they weren't sure whether it was an eagle or a falcon, but when you looked at the research behind it, it's more likely that it is a falcon. And Guruji, when you look at the falcon, it's one of the fastest flying birds. It will fly against the wind. It's the only bird that will fly opposite to which way the winds go, because most birds tend to fly with the winds, which also sort of denotes the fact that you're willing to stand up and fight against somebody, or like you're willing to stand up for the betterment, or you're willing to stand up against somebody that's got completely opposite views to you, and coming back to that, making sure that you always stand for the truth, and you're always willing to cut through falsehood and anything bad to stand up for the truth. And the falcon was very loyal. It always kept coming back to Guru Sahib. It was very good at carrying out its job. It was reliable. It took all the messages that needed taking for Guruji. So that there's a lot of symbolism behind Guruji's falcon.
Okay, brilliant, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Nina. That was wonderful. That was wonderful. Thank you.
It's okay. It's all right.